Into a live episode of the things that we don't talk about in church. My name is Darrell, and joining me is my co-host of the show. Going to bring him in a second. His name's Michael Chancy. We've done a couple recorded podcast episodes, but we just kind of felt like let's try a little bit with the live stream audience. So let's jump in. Let's try to connect with you. This audience is still super kind of small, around 100 subscribers from the moment of this live stream, but super passionate about spreading the gospel, doing some men's ministry, trying to just encourage you and just kind of walk you through just day-to-day life and faith. And so in this episode, we're going to talk about communication between husbands and wives. It could get a little touchy. Michael, we may do, Michael, I'm not really sure. Let's go ahead and bring you in. Like kind of our communication style is super relational. And, one of the reasons why we kind of wanted to do this podcast is to just be real, right? And just kind of float into topics and really dive a little bit deeper. I mean, it's something that we've really discussed in other episodes that we've published, really surrounding, hey, you got church on Sunday. Maybe there's layer 2, you got small groups, and you got layer 3, that's really doing life with one another. But let's go ahead and get started. Michael, man, you just got back from a big trip with the family. How was it, man?
It was awesome. Did a cross country trip with my son. He is a Marine out in San Diego, transferring to North Carolina. So I did a cross country trip with him from San Diego. That route, we spent 4 days during that process. It was really cool, man. It's good to get to know your kids. Nothing like spending 4 days and nights with your kids. He's 46 years old, Darrell, so it's a little different than your perspective and what you have going on. So, but the adult conversations that you have now versus what you had at that age 26 years ago. So there's obviously the complexity of that. He's married. They just had their first child, 5 months old. So there's that whole dynamic and being able to talk parenthood with your 26-year-old Marine who is gung ho. So it was different. It was different, but it was fun. Once in a lifetime thing. I hope he never goes back to San Diego. So next time, I hope it's just a fun family trip.
Yeah. Michael, it's something with like the topics that we're kind of working through. So the people watching live or watching the replay on this, we, in terms of doing life together. And so I would say it's kind of like a phase 3, at least with our relationship, to where we can just be really 100% real with one another and just kind of dive in to tough stuff. And so one area that you really sewed into my life, I think it's been about 5 years, has been my marriage. And I've been married for about as long as we've known each other. So we've had a lot of, at least I've had a lot of conversations calling like, Michael, man, I don't even know what's going on. I mean, just the difficulties of, bringing kids in and, we've got 2 younger kids. Michael, you've got like 55 kids that you've had your entire life. And so very, very seasoned, but man, let's jump into just kind of your heart behind communication with your wife. And, so like this isn't really a time. Obviously, if you go in on Sunday, every once in a while, you're going to hear a lesson about this. But let's dive into the stuff that maybe a pastor or preacher really wouldn't get that deep in maybe a 25 to 35 minute sermon, maybe something a little bit deeper than, you'd actually really get in a small group, right? Because everybody's still kind of closed off a little bit, maybe not as close in some small groups. I mean, we actually met in I think it was a marriage small group at a church out in Lakeland, Florida. But like we instantly connected, started playing golf together. I mean, it was just something that we connected with, but let's have you kick it off, right? Give us a skinny, give us something that you have experienced in just doing life with other Christian men that, you're not going to hear in church on Sunday.
Well, when Darrell and I talk about the complexity of just diving in deep. His and I relationship, it's fun on this side of it because I've walked through what Darrell's already walked through, and so hearing him say those things, it's a refresher to me of how far I've come, and I think everyone has to experience that from the lowest level, and then they gain that experience. And obviously, when you have infants, and then into toddlers, as Darrell does, those are learning phase, or that infant stage of parenthood, and then once you get, I think I'm the grandparent age of parenthood. My youngest is 20, my oldest is in his 30s. I have 9 grandchildren, and so there's a complexity of that, and seeing, it's vitally important too when I watch my children and how they interact with their kids and how they raise their kids, and being able to stand to that. But some of the things that we talk about as men, in these groups, on how we communicate, with our wives, and the same thing goes with the communication that Darrell and I have, getting away from the norm, getting away from just talking about love and cherish. And those things are great. Those things are important. But Darrell's going to pop up a stat here in a little while that's going to show the just the dynamic of divorce rate in America these days, because one, we don't have commitment. Two, I mean, we don't talk about the hard subjects. And three, man, we just give up. I mean, that's kind of the way it's trended lately, in those 3 areas. And working in the retail field that I work in, and seeing a lot of young people come in, a lot of young people get married, a lot of young people get divorced. It's that not wanting to fight for it. It's that not wanting to grind it out, Darrell. Communication's important. And look, man,
Mhm.
we can talk about all these other things, but if we're being very transparent, we're being very real. When we start talking, about things we don't talk about in church, we're talking about, finances, and deep rooted finances. And when we start talking about finance, we talk about, let's be honest. Hey, what are you spending that I don't like you spending on? And what am I spending that you don't like me spending on? And those are the things that we tend to stick in the back closet when it comes to communicating with our spouses, because let's face it, those are going to cause arguments. When we start talking about intimacy, we start talking about sex, and whether, hey, I need more, hey, I need less, hey, I need you to meet this need, or I need you to meet that need. Most arguments, tend to that, because Dale, as well as I mean, when my wife, same as you, when I met my
Yeah.
wife, and she's attractive, she's still beautiful to this day and gorgeous, but that lustful, intimacy that you have at that early stage, day in and day out, 23 years later, it becomes something that, we have to sit down and we have to communicate about. We have to be able to have those intimate conversations without having the fear, of the other person being offended. And I do a horrible job of that a lot of times. I'm the one that my wife is extremely good about coming to me and sharing with me what she needs. How what I need to say, things I need to say to her. Fears. I mean, man, if I'm driving, dude, apparently I scare her to death. That offends me. And I should be able to sit that back in the back burner and go, it's not about me, it's about her. And I think those things, not, I mean, when your spouse gets to a point where they're afraid to talk to you because of backlash, and
Ooh. Yeah.
I'm being very transparent. I mean, that's happened in my relationship. My wife she has harbored things, and she's held things in because she knew if she came to me, I was gonna get offended, and then there was gonna be an argument, because it's not being self-reflective. It's at that time, going, well, let me tell you about you, and then the finger pointing starts, and then it just goes back and forth rather than it just being a reflective thing, Darrell.
Yeah, no, Michael, really, really good point. Thanks for jumping in to that area. Okay, so like this episode wasn't going to be about lust and all that different type of stuff, but it really dives into, and I also don't want this point to be made, Michael, about, because I've had conversations with you where I'm like, all right, man, so like let's go to this scripture real quick right here, and like, what does it say right here, right? And how many different younger Christian guys regardless of like denomination that they grew up in.
Mm.
I feel like they've always kind of almost been trained to keep like a couple of those verses in their back pocket. And the one that I had to read a little bit further down was to love your wife as Christ loved the church. Now that means a lot of different things, right? But it's like true honor. And it's true commitment. It's man, it is a dedication beyond anything, right? And like once we kind of look at some of these analytics, and it's a study back in 2001 that will pop up in a second. That's basically just got the divorce rate, and like 3 areas I kind of want to look at, Michael, are first marriage divorce rate, and then most people. Probably psychologically are going to kind of think, well, if the first one didn't work out, let's try the second. And then the second didn't work out, let's try the third, the fourth, the fifth, right? I mean, like we've most likely all kind of know somebody maybe, or know somebody that knows somebody that's been married like 5 times, right?
Yeah.
And, the percentage, it doesn't go down, it dramatically goes up. But no, man, I mean, I communication wise, and the point that you made that is so good, on your wife not being able to feel a certain way to actually have this conversation with you. And in full transparency, I mean, like me and Morgan, my wife, have done and gone through quite a bit of different stages where it's like, I dig myself in a hole, and then I'll call you and say, hey buddy, I'm thinking like 3 or 4 days, maybe I'll come up from it. Right. Like, do you have a extension ladder or something that you can throw me to help me kind of get out of it? And it's just, I think especially like younger, man that's just trying to do it right. But I can tell you from personal experience, don't throw certain scriptures at your wife to be submissive to you unless you read the rest of the chapter. Because if you think you got, some tension communication wise in your marriage, go ahead and throw that bad boy out there, because it's going to put you so far deep. And for me, it took a ton of humility. It took you and then another buddy to be like, hey man, it ain't about you.
Yeah.
And like, that's the toughest thing, especially when you're talking about intimacy. And like, the longer you get married and, you mix kids in it, and man, you're just like, you're always looking forward to tomorrow. And, I like right now in my season in life, dude, I try to just take care of today. And even when I wake up and I'm like all in on today, I can find myself drifting, like the enemy getting in, making me thinking about finance, this or that, or, maybe it's a lack of intimacy, right? Or just like whatever it could be to actually attack the marriage and like attack the, like that godly home that like you're trying to secure and keep safe. So like, what are some, let's just do this. What's a good story about a guy that you mentored that was going, that's not me, right? Because I'm throwing some stuff out there, but like,
you
what's a
just
good
use a different
story?
name.
Sure. I can't completely do that. But like, what's a good relational story that you just got right off the top of your head about, a communication issue with like a young guy that's married, and everything kind of seems pretty good on the outside, just like optically, but really on the inside, man, I mean, there is some warfare going on.
Yeah. No, I've got several men in my life that I've mentored, and not that I'm the end all. I've got several that mentor me right back. I have a young man who's extremely successful in business right now, and um, got a wife, got 2 small kids, and is doing very, very well. And he and I were having a conversation about a month ago, and he was just talking about how he was. We were discussing, Darrell, the difference between contentment and relentless pursuit. So, which represents 2 opposing approaches to life. And when I was reading, and I'm going to read some of this that I wrote down. It says contentment emphasizes satisfaction with what you have, embracing the present moment and cultivating peace of mind. It's about finding fulfillment in the right now, and appreciating what's already in your life, and letting go of the constant desire for more. contentment is often associated with inner peace, stability, and gratitude. And he and I were having the conversation, and it was about several different things. It started off with, he wants more, 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 more. His wife wants them to be at home more, 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 more. And
Yeah.
and he is, and I think Darrell, Satan will play that evil game with you to make it, because if you're out making money and you're supporting your family, I mean, you're not cheating on your wife, you're not out at the bars, you're honestly working, but honestly working 80 or 70, 80 hours a week and
Hmm.
putting, I mean, putting a lot of things on the table, but your time, Satan will disguise it as you're doing a good thing when internally you're ripping apart a marriage and you're ripping apart that communication intimacy that your wife is longing for, because this young man's wife has been home with the kids all day. So
Yeah.
she's wanting that adult time. She's wanting some time for him to come home and do these things. And so you know anytime I'm mentoring someone, I never give them the out. I give them an out. So it was, hey, you have, basically you have to decide whether you want to be in relentless pursuit and balance that with contentment in your life, and then weigh the pros and cons of what you're doing and decide what's most important. And he's it's hard. I mean, when you're on that level, Darrell, you know what I'm talking about. You're in pursuit. I mean,
Hmm.
you and I have this conversation. You're in relentless pursuit of getting to a certain level at this point. I don't think that's affected your contentment with your family, because you and I talk about what goes on in your life. So, but once you get to that level and it's sustained for a long period of time, and then that conversation happens, man, it's hard to drop. It's hard to drop off at that point. So, there's a level of conversation that was lacking. And part of our conversation was, at what point did she not trust coming and talking to you about this? This didn't just happen overnight, because I mean, I've known this
Hmm.
guy for 25 years. This didn't just happen overnight. So this was one of those things where she had been harboring that and harboring that. And it got to the point where maybe it was 40, maybe then it was 50 hours a week, then 55, then 60, and then all of a sudden it's, hey, I'm gonna work 60 hours a week, and then I got to go work out, and I got to do this, and I got that, and I'm home in time for supper, and I'm awake for another hour, and then everybody's in bed. And that did not become contentment. It became resentment at that point. And
Oh
there was,
man,
and there was
that's so
such
good, Michael.
there was such a lot of resentment that was building up, because that communication line was not available. It just wasn't available. And we all fall short of that. I mean, if my wife came in here right now and got on this podcast, she could tell you story after story of examples of my failures in that. But here's the key.
Let's
Okay,
bring her on.
no, let's don't. Let's don't do that.
Let's not do that.
We'll plan.
Okay,
Yeah,
fair game.
I need to prepare for that. But but here's the key. We Nina and I, no matter what we do, we're gonna fight and we're gonna grind it out. We have a knockdown dragouts. We're just like any other couple. I don't think God designed. Um, he made us different, and therefore we're gonna have differences of opinion. We're gonna have differences of way we do things. And um, you said such a good thing a minute ago, Darrell. You talked about men will use that. And we see it always used as a punchline. You're supposed to be submissive, and we hear that as a punchline. But you're exactly right. We don't read down far enough. We don't read that part where it says, love your wife as Christ loved the church, and to give your all. I mean, how did Christ love the church? He gave. I mean, he bled, died, hung on a cross, a bloody death, and gave every single ounce of it. I heard a pastor preaching one time on this. Within the last 6 months, man, and he was just content of saying, man, he says, anything my wife wants, that's what he says, I give it to her. He says, I'm going to give it. He says, I serve to make her happy. God created her in my life for me to make her happy, to serve her as Christ served the church. Now, he did go on to say, when there's big decisions for them to make, they sit down and they talk it out together. And he says, it's rare that they get stuck, that they get that they get hung up on, let's do this or let's don't do that. Most of the time it's they both have that sense of peace with it. But he did say that, that God did make man the head of the home, and after a certain amount of prayer and supplication, there is that, he makes the decision, and she respects that out of him. Now, I mean, he's not going in, and I think, Darrell, I don't know if you can relate to this, but you know, I made a bad mistake one time, and I thought I was doing a really good thing, and I went and bought a whole room full of furniture for my wife as a surprise.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Mm,
man. Yeah, tell me
mm.
about it, buddy. That was not a good thing. And you know, I come to realize those things are important to her. Let her have the things that are important to her, and you serve her. What do you want? Anytime she asks me, hey, I want this or I want that, or hey, said, hey, I like this, I like that, man, there's nothing in me that doesn't want to give that to her, because I want to serve her the best I can. And then when we have decisions to make, and when that pastor preached that, Darrell, I literally went, you know what? I don't ever remember a time where Nina and I didn't have a big decision, whether it was a car, house, property, Airbnb. I mean, whatever we're investing in, that we didn't pray about it and both have the same peace about it. I don't ever remember going, "Hey, I'm the man card and I'm making the decision." I don't think I've ever had to do that. And I think that comes from, being able to sit down and go, "Hey, let's talk about this situation. How do you feel?" And having that respect and that empathy toward her feelings, that I know she longs for me to see and for me to want.
Yeah, yeah. So let's touch base on this one thought I've got. Then let's glance at some scripture and then glance at the study
Okay.
and kind of wrap up this live episode. Not really sure how long we're going to go. We didn't really pre-plan anything. So let's just dive into it. Let's just have a little bit more in-depth conversation.
Okay.
So, and also, if anyone hears baby screaming, those are my two getting ready for bed. So we're just rolling with it, man. We're just rolling with it tonight, Michael. So one thought that I had as you were kind of working through just kind of like that whole spill, right? Like just that whole transition point is communication style and where the enemy comes in, because like especially different stages, right? Something you definitely hear in church or you hear in premarital counseling is there's going to be a honeymoon stage, and most men, at least for me, I mean, like things are kind of going like one direction for a long time. You get married, things transition a little bit, you had some kids, and things change really, really quickly. So like the longer that you're married, Michael, things look different, they feel different. And that point you made about like, where's your time actually go? Like if you're out there working 70 hours a week, and you're just pushing and you're providing for the family, but you're not redistributing portions of your time of intentionality with the family, with the kids. And I mean, that's something I struggle with, that I have to like constantly be diligent about. But the point that I want to drive in and then look at some scripture real quick out in Ephesians, so we can read the full context of it and just get you to just kind of break that down a little bit, is men in terms of, I think I'm pretty safe to say this. You tell me if I'm wrong. Men are going to look at how the relationship's going really based off intimacy and sex with their wife. So it's more of a physical thing, right? Like I need this, I need this so often. And women, from what I've learned, don't really work that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Diving into, because like my wife stays home with the kids, and I mean, I'm going to say it right now. I mean, like I wouldn't trade places figuring out how to provide for the family, because like my nerves just sitting with the kid. I mean, it's freaking hard, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is. It is a special ability that God made women a certain way to persevere and like raise kids and give birth to kids, right? Like it's a legit thing. And men have to realize, and I have to constantly remind myself of this, is that it's not about the physical. Yeah. So like if you can hit the emotional side and just the intentionality of your time side when you dive in and you're super intentional with,
Mm,
and I mean, like I do this thing where like I sit on the floor a lot with the kids, right? Where like Morgan's like, man, I always see you sitting on the ground with the kids. And so when it hits me actively in my mind, I'll get up and we'll go do something, right? Because like straight up, I can just lay on the ground, the kids will just climb on me and they're having fun, right? And I'm coming in after the end of the day, just whipped from working or whatever I'm doing, right? Just
mhm.
trying to like provide for the family. And it's really easy for men because I find myself in it, just getting lazy on that aspect. So, right. So if you get lazy on that aspect, does that really promote your wife to want to fulfill the physical side of what God designed to be awesome for you? Probably not, right? Like you're probably going to have ups and downs with it, and it's going to be nonstop arguments and battles, and people, the husband or wife just keep it internal for so long that it just festers and it eventually blows up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of that a little bit, at least on like the physical side versus the emotional, or just the intentionality of time when like the man is done with the day, right? And
Yeah.
like he needs to come in and like relieve his wife because like his wife's been getting beat up all day long.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I mean, like, where do we go with that? Right. I mean,
Yeah.
like, what's a couple ways to do a little bit better?
Yeah, no, that is such a great question, and if I guarantee you, I wish if there were a billion men listening to this, a billion men would respond to that same thing as like, heck yeah, what's going on with this? But the 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 thing I want to get through, Daryl, is this: that men would rather be respected than loved, and women would rather be loved than respected. And I think we turn that dial up, especially at the end of a day. The man has this, I do. We have this expectation when we come home of what it's supposed to be like. And I think when that expectation is not managed correctly, we come home and get disappointed. And the moment we get disappointed is the moment that everything starts to rise up. That's when
Oh
every
no. Yes.
yeah,
That's
everything
it.
starts to
Yeah.
rise up,
I mean, think
and
about that.
yeah, so, when let's start with this. First thing, I sent you a thing, I can't remember how long ago it was. It was bullet points on the enemy wants, and I went down bullet point by bullet point. I don't know if you remember getting that,
Hmm.
and one of the things it says, the devil wants you to be too busy to spend time in the Word. Let me preface all this by saying, man, if you want to be the head of your house, but you're not spending time in the word, you are not going to be equipped to be able to handle the things that come when they come that way. I can promise you.
Mm.
The devil wants you to be quick to answer and slow to listen. And that is not a trait of a leader to start off with. And God has equipped and called us as men to be the leaders of our home. And so if we do not have the skill to listen, we cannot hear how to lead. And our wives are the people that are in that foxhole with us. They're the ones throwing grenades with us and blowing stuff up. So they've got to be the ones in there that we have to be able to listen to. Otherwise, we're going to fall into some of these stats that you're about to go to. Secondly, the devil does not want you to speak into your spouse's life rather than encourage them to hear from God. I think that is so important because a lot of times, and I am so guilty of this, Daryl, on 100 different ways, man. The advice monster will get on my shoulder, and man, I'm like, oh, I got an answer for that. Man, I can fix that. I know how to do that. I can do this. Rather than a lot of times encouraging my wife to seek God and go, hey, well, you need to seek God in this because you know what? He has a better idea how to handle this than I do. Way better idea to handle this.
Yeah, yeah. So I've been trying to fly in Ephesians. Let me see if I can do it and not mess up the cropping here. So let's just throw us at the bottom there. Michael, this is where people usually kind of jump to. Just doing a little
Mhm.
Bible Gateway, Ephesians 5. It's going to be
Yeah.
New Living Translation, which is the one I kind of like to jump into. But yeah, a lot of people focus in on this first half. For wives, this means submit to your husband as to the Lord. For a husband's the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church. He's a savior of his body in the church. As the church submits to Christ, your wife should submit to your husbands in everything. Oh, buddy, have I used that one? Quite I think I've only used it like maybe twice officially. But my goodness, did it get me in trouble. But you and then another buddy, Dalton, got me to read a little bit further down. So in verse 25, I keep this one really close to me. For husbands, this means love your wives just as Christ loved the church. He gave up his life for her. A lot of this goes deeper. I really want to kind of just focus in on that one because I feel like if you can keep that the main thing, and I think I've said in other episodes, and I mean obviously this is our first live one, so we're diving in. Hopefully, if you like it, hit the subscribe button. Also hit a like on this live stream if you're watching the replay. But one thing that I had to protect myself in terms of my mind is just going to the gym, dude. Right? Like walking, like I go to the gym anywhere from like 3:30 to 4:30 in the morning. So it's super freaking early. Yeah. And I go to a Crunch Fitness out here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And depending on which day, maybe super packed at 4:30 or just, kind of a ghost town. But regardless, there's always like one other like woman there, right? Wearing basically nothing. And I think a lot of men can relate to this in being innocent, just trying to take care of yourself physically and, like get yourself right. And you're heading to the gym and like the enemy is just everywhere, man. I mean, there's distraction, there's lust everywhere. And so when I got redirected to like verse 25, verse 26 right here in Ephesians, dude, I went through a couple months. And I've gotten it pretty well straight now to where like my head is almost like looking to the ceiling, but not. But I would have to point my head down. And, I get on the treadmill, warm up for like 5 minutes and just walk. And dude, I was just reciting that to myself, right? I mean, almost like praying without ceasing, but just kind of, but not really, right? Like I'm just saying the verse to myself because I'm just, like I was so focused in that season. And like, this was like this past year. I was so focused in that season to like just figure out a way to get closer to my wife and not have all this stuff in front of me. And it was I wasn't tempted or anything, but like, man, when it's walking in front of you and, you're trying to figure out how to navigate like the longer that you're actually married and like, boom, there's the devil throwing stuff at you. And, you put yourself in that place because you got to go hit the gym. I mean, like out here in Tulsa in a big metro, like there's anywhere you go, temptation's going to be there. And, I got so radical about it to where I was just hitting that verse in my head and I was walking around the gym, just like staring at the floor. I mean, it's just full struggle mode, right? But I wanted to throw that verse up because we all know Christians that do this little book chapter verse thing where like they jump around and they want to hit like 3 different books, 3 different like 1 or 2 verses, pieces of scripture to like just kind of hammer a point. For me, I grew up Church of Christ, and they are, in my opinion, out of all Christians I've met, like the best at doing this, to where they can pick in 5, 6 different books, Michael, and just pull together a thought of theology of saying like, this is this is that. And a lot of men and a lot of other marriages that I can tell from just growing up and observing with married people being in the Church of Christ, they really focus in on those first couple verses in Ephesians, and their wives don't have voices at all, and like it's a total control marriage. And like, that's not what it's about. Like Jesus didn't want that. I mean, like the apostles preaching here, they didn't say that, right? I mean, like obviously there's an order, but Christians, man, sometimes can take a couple things and just really use it to like justify whatever they're trying to get into and make their wives be over the top spiritually submissive to where, in my opinion, it's just kind of abusive.
Yeah, no doubt about that, Darrell. There's, that verse, tying that verse into, what does it mean when it says love the church as Christ, love your wife as Christ loved the church, and I try to I will think about implementing that with, you know what what did Christ sacrifice for me? And when I think about the harsh reality of what he went through, um, on the road to Damascus, on the getting nailed to the cross, getting beaten, I mean, humiliated, standing up there, and I think about that. That's how he loved the church. I think a lot of times, uh, to your point, Daryl, where we're looking at the man being, and let's just call it a spirit of control, because if he can control it, then he gets his way. Everything's great. He doesn't have to deal with anything else. Whereas if you have a relationship, man, there's gonna be hurts. You're gonna have arguments. You can't live with the same person day in and day out for years after year after year without having some knockdown dragouts. It's the perseverance, and I relate that to Christ too. He didn't give up. I mean, he hung there. How did Christ love the church? He didn't give up. He welcomed death. He took it, and he kept on and kept on. And so when I look at that, I think about, when all I see is my pain, I lose sight of God, Daryl, because
Mm.
this I know for a fact. Love will always leave a mark every single time. When I see Christ, the epitome of love, he's scarred. I mean, he's got the scars. Love will always leave a mark. So you just, I have to convince myself to keep on fighting and keep on fighting. Um, I had a pastor one time tell me this, and I'm always reminded of it. And I mentioned it to Nina one time or twice, and she reminds me of it from time to time. Is God created me to be the head, to be first. That means I'm the first to apologize. I'm the first to make reconciliation. I'm the first to come to her and go, "Hey, let's work this out." And I think men radically miss that, Daryl. Radically miss that, from A to Z. We sit there and I mean, I've talked to men who will sit there forever going, "Man, I ain't wrong in this, and I'm not going to say I'm wrong," and they're
Yeah.
gonna wait for them to come.
I've
And
been there.
then yeah, Daryl, you've been there, and you're on the other side of that there. So you have that scar from that. That love left a mark. And here we are now, and we're talking about that. And I don't mean it in a bad way. Look, I don't enjoy arguing with my wife. I mean, man, that is the absolute worst thing that I want to do, is argue with her. Um, but I can tell you this, there's I don't know of an argument, and if there were people on this, if we had enough on here, I'm sure somebody would say it. I don't know that there's anything she could tell me that eventually I wouldn't forgive her for, because I do know this. I know, I've talked to men who have been in, relationships where their spouse has committed adultery. I've counseled men through that process, and where people wanna leave, and I won't sit here and tell you everyone I'm most successful by no stretch of the means, but I can tell you this, I know what the scripture says. It says to forgive 99 times, I can't remember what it is, because you and I are not Bible scholars, but it's
A
99 times.
billion times.
Yeah, it's a lot. And when I read that scripture, it's like, you know what? Man, if I only had one chance and God didn't forgive me, if I only had 2 chances or 3, how many chances have I had? And I'm not sitting there thinking, "Man, my time is up," I've had too many chances, and God's gonna, because God loves me, okay, like Christ loves the church. He loves me that much. I have to be able to love my wife and be able to deal with that. We're all gonna have setbacks. We're all gonna have hurts, but again, I mean, man, I should probably get this tattooed if my wife would ever let me have another one. Love always leaves a mark. If it doesn't, you probably are not in a healthy relationship, because a healthy relationship is you're gonna have those times. You can't, Darrell, you've been married how long? 5 years now?
5 years, yeah.
5 years. I've been married for 23 years to Nina. I would be
Yeah,
a fool to
that's
sit
a
on
long
here and
time,
go,
Michael.
I'd be a fool to sit here and tell you, Darrell, 23 years, we've never had an argument. We've never had a knockdown drag out. Um, you know, we've never, it's just, it's unrealistic. It's how are you going to handle that? Are you going to cower down? Are you going to be one of the statistics that we talk about? Are you going to be that, you know, second divorce rates higher than the third? I mean, just, it doesn't get any easier. There's a common denominator. Once you get up to 5 divorces, you're the common denominator in that thing.
Oh yeah.
And, if you're not self-reflecting and looking at what do you need to change rather than trying to find someone who will change and mold themselves around you, man, you're gonna just be lonely. You're gonna always be striving to find it, and you're never gonna find it, because I'm gonna tell you right now, if you're looking for somebody to fill a void rather than looking for God to fill the void, you're gonna always end up empty.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's glance at this study real quick before we bounce out. Wilkinson and Finker Beaner or Fink Beaner. I can't read, Michael. Finker Beaner. This is one I just found that felt like it was a little bit more put together. So this was back in 2021. So I'm just going to kind of push down a little bit. U.S. divorce rate per 1,000 married women. Just looking kind of at this percentage, I want to focus on 7 because like it's kind of the category that we're looking at, and it's something that we talked about that I briefly mentioned kind of at the very beginning of this video or this live stream, and then you kind of brought it into it a second ago. Researchers estimate that 41% of all first marriages end in divorce. So if you think communication's broken down, it's going out of left field, right field, whatever, and hey, I'm just going to call it quits for reasons that's not adultery or stuff like that, or like your spouse passes away. 60% of second marriages end in divorce, and 73% of all third marriages end in divorce. The United States is 6th highest divorce rate in the world. So, Michael, let's not laugh about it, but it's pretty apparent that this is a really important topic. I think just off this one live stream, this one episode of the podcast, that I'm sure we'll talk about it more and more, but with just different stories that we've got, just personally, and ones that can kind of relate, like at least me, like a younger version of you doing the same stupid thing, right? And like doing the same cycle. But it's the thought, man, that like, dude, like you really have to take this serious and figure it out. And you can't go and stay in the doldrums too long if you're a man in the marriage, because like your wife is going to disconnect from you in a lot of different areas. And I can tell you from personal experience, if your wife at any moment starts to disconnect herself emotionally from you for XYZ, whatever reason that is. And I mean, it's happened to me a little bit to where like we had to really have some tough talks. Yeah, there's some arguments and, some good resolution that we've worked on things and, kind of, made some good pivots and stuff. But a lot of it from my perspective is, there's a lot that like a guy has to handle. But God built you a different way, just like your wife can watch the kids, 2 kids, 3 kids, basically 24/7, and built her in such a way that she can handle that. And so, I just want to encourage men. I mean, like, look, you've got to get this figured out. Because if you don't, and then you get in that second and third. Now, I know tons of people that been married second time and it's been very successful, right? But if you just look at across the board, and if you're really trying to like read your Bible every day, or more intentionality behind reading your Bible, and like you're really going to get in it and start trying to change your life, man, I mean, like you really have to dive deep and just be honest with yourself. Because like the toughest thing is, at least to me, like looking at these data points, and I mean, we didn't spend a lot of time on the data, but
Yeah.
Michael, like there's a lot of humility for men that like they just have to be humble, man. Even if you're freaking wrong, if you come up and actually say you're right, like let's just know the actual success hit rate. It's almost zero, right?
Yeah.
You just going back and forth with your wife. You have to come to a place to where like it's not about being right. It's about being intentional with like what you say and what you do, because most men, and just my final point, toss it to you and we'll go ahead and wrap up the
Yeah.
episode, is that we're so focused in doing, and we don't sit back with enough time to actually do the mental side of it, right? So we're into the physical, obviously physical intimacy, right? Physical aspects of hitting the gym, eating right, working hard at your career, whatever that is. But then most of us drop the ball at home, where the wife is just
Yeah.
getting mentally destroyed by the kids or whatever else is going on, and we can get lazy, man, and just turn that TV on or whatever, or work late at night, and we're not spending that time to meet them mentally, emotionally, wherever they actually need that support. I mean, like their connection and love language is way different generally than men.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you there, Darrell, and that is such a great point that you're bringing out about the different complexities of men and women and how we deal with that when we come home, and it is different, um, and the 2 scenarios, and I've lived in both of them where, my wife was a stay-at-home mom for, the first 18 years of our marriage. Um, there was a sense of, she was at home with the kids all day, and then I came home. Now, there is a generational thing. My dad came home, and my mom cooked, and my dad sat and watched TV and did that thing, and so, there's a learned behavior there that you have to get out of, but, when it became apparent, because it became apparent because Nina made it apparent to me that I was her helper and I was not doing my job. And so I would come home from work and yeah, I'd be tired, but I underestimated what it took. We had 7 kids at the house that she was looking after. And so there was a sense of, you know,
That's right, 7.
dude, yeah,
Not
yeah. She had this, I know it.
Michael.
Yeah, I know it.
Oh,
So
yeah.
so sh I can, looking back, at how spiritually immature I was back then, Daryl, now I look back and I can envision her getting excited about me coming home and her getting some help and getting some relief. And then I can also envision her getting frustrated when I didn't come home and live up to that expectation. And, that was a conversation that I had to mature in. Nina, I think, I mean, she expressed it well. I just didn't mature in it. And, when Nina started working about 4 years ago, I started doing a lot more serving because she was busy and I wanted to support her career and I wanted to support what she was doing and she was new in it. And so she was spending a lot of time in that. And the best way I could serve her was to pick up around here. And I realized what that took. And I can tell you our marriage evolved once I became a servant to my wife. When I expressed servant leadership to her and loved her in a manner of, "Hey, I've got dinner. Hey, I got this. I got that. I got the dishes. I got this. I got that." Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, I still go and I do the things that I want to do because I think God's created man to be that outside source, to have those things. And there's a reason why we want to hit a little white golf ball and go chase it around the thing because we have that innate inertia to want to go out and compete. And I'm a big hunter, so there's that gatherer mentality that I have that my wife knows, and she allows. And I don't want to use that word because I don't want to use it like somebody's going to allow you. There's a
Yeah,
there's a
Michael.
there's a commonality of when your wife allows you, it means you're on the same page. When I use that
Mm.
word, my wife allows me, we're on the same page. She understands my need. I understand her need. She allows me to go do that, and it's without repercussion. I don't come home and she's lording that over my head that I was out there. So we don't have that argument. So, you know, I would challenge any man, I would challenge you, Darrell, any man on this that's listening to this, spend the next 30 days serving your wife to more than you are right now, because more than likely you're not doing everything that you could do. If you change that mentality, if you go, all right, when I come home, I'm not going to come home and do this anymore. I'm going to come home and do this, this, and this, and take that off her plate. My wife calls it shutting windows. Look, man, if I want to get lucky at night, I ain't getting lucky with 5 windows open. I'm just telling you right now. I mean,
It ain't
and
happening.
that ain't happening, Jack. You know, but if I come in and I go, "Hey, babe, what windows can I help you close?" And you know, there's that. She knows I want to help her and serve her. That doesn't mean it happens every night, but she knows my heart is to help her get that closure before she goes to bed. My mind doesn't work that way. My man, carnal mind, you know, I can go to bed with 5 windows open and I go, I get it tomorrow. You know, I think a woman, most women have that thing where they're like, they have these things that they want to get done, and they're going to get those done, or they're not going to go to bed with that peace of mind. So I challenge you. I challenge Darrell. I challenge you. I challenge every man that's listening to this. You know, do something out of the ordinary to make your wife feel special, to make her feel, and that ain't going to get flowers. That's coming home and doing stuff different than you've ever done it before, and going and getting her attention. I call it making love, man. When I come home, I'm like, what can I do? I want to make love to Nina. I want to meet her love language, which is acts of service, and I want to come in and I want to be able to go, what can I do for you today? And then hit all those points, whether or not intimacy happens, great. If it doesn't, you know what, man? That's my here, Darrell. I'm gonna tell you this: for every man that's sitting around that gets pissed off because his wife doesn't have intimacy with him, that's your wife for eternity. The chances of you not being intimate again are zero. So it's
Yeah.
gonna happen. It's gonna happen. Start stressing out about it. Start doing your job. And I can tell you this, if you do your job as a man and you lead, okay, if you leave with a servant heart, you are gonna feel peace, you're gonna feel contentment. Your wife, you won't you'll be surprised at how your wife reciprocates that, okay, later on down the road in your life.
All right, Michael, let's go ahead and wrap this up. In about 60 seconds to 2 minutes, what's your final piece? What's a couple nuggets for people to walk away with?
You know, I'll say it again. I mean, love leaves marks. If you and your wife are 100% and y'all are committed and you're in love, just understand that. I mean, you're going to have arguments. It's going to happen. Don't let it be that end all conversation. Um, Make sure you fight fair for the love of Mike. You know, you use don't use there's words that you don't use when you're fighting, because those are emotional words. You know, I always say, you know, there's responding and reacting. You know, never make a decision out of reacting or an emotion. So you just be careful what you say when you're arguing with your spouse, because that's the person you still want to go to bed with at night. That's the person you still want to get up with in the morning. And Lord have mercy, we all, every man that's watching this, every woman that's watching this knows that it's just not fun going to work the next day and that thing is still lingering over you. There is nothing in the world worse than that, because you know it's not going to end there. You think about it all day long and you're going to come home. So, you know, just realize this, and I've said it a dozen times, but it's one of my favorites. Love will leave a mark. If you're in love, it's going to happen, and you're going to have scars. Okay, but those scars will help you get through the rest of your life. Your kids are going to see that, Darrell. Your kids are going to see you and Morgan and how you guys interact. They're going to see how y'all have disagreements too, and they're going to see how you come back together from that. And you know what? I'm blessed. I have 5 of my 7 kids are married. Every one of them on their first marriage. None of them have been divorced. They all have great kids, and you know, I'm fortunate and blessed that, you know, they saw me be able to do some things wrong, and they saw me do a whole lot of things right. But they also know that I love that me and their mom love each other, and no matter what happens behind closed doors, whether we're knocking boots or whether we're
Mhm.
putting on the gloves, we're always going to come out there and we're going to be on the same team.
Well, Michael, let's go ahead and wrap this one up because speaking of kids, I gotta go ahead and help put mine down for tonight. My last thought, hey, look, my wife says, look, I don't ever get a break. It's 24 hours a day. It's 24/7. And it's so true. If guys, you have to go 24/7 too, though you're doing different things. Men, you're built different to when you're done working for the day, you ain't freaking done working for the day. And that's a lot of humility. That's a lot of honesty with yourself. And kind of just to wrap up Michael's point, work harder, right? Because you can always work harder. You can always push yourself. Obviously, if there's a health it's probably such a low likelihood. This is literally just a mindset of getting in, getting dirty, doing what it takes, never stop, just pushing, working, helping the kids, picking up things, right? And just be intentional, just asking, where can I help? Like I love the analogy that you threw out about like the open windows, right? Because men, really easy, we'll skip things down the road, right? And we'll have a couple planners, we'll put it in there, we'll take care of it tomorrow. It doesn't bother us, but our wives are losing their minds over those open windows.
Yeah.
So Mike, let's go ahead and wrap up. Great first live episode, huh?
Good stuff. Yeah, I like them. That's such a great topic. We could talk about that for another hour or two.
Yeah, well, let's save it for another episode because my wife's going to be upset with me if I don't get out of here and go get if I don't get out of here and go get one of those kids.
I got you.
But all right, that's going to wrap it up for this live episode of the things that we don't talk about in church. Hopefully, this episode has helped you a lot. If you're catching on the replay, thanks for joining us on the replay. Drop a comment. Let us know about some topics that you may want us to cover in the future. Also, do us a favor, subscribe to this channel because it's just an easy stat that most of you watching this content, this video, are not yet subscribed to the channel. So do us a favor and subscribe. It's going to do it for this one.